Alright, I've spun the truck around here, and you can believe this or not, there's only 4 bolts holding the motor, 1 bolt holding the muffler, plus this linkage rod. That is it. The first thing we're going to do is we got to get this linkage rod off. So, we need to pop the air filter off. And in here, you're going to find a 50 thousandths or 0.050, I think it's a half a millimeter, something like that. And you need to take off this inside retainer. Now that we got that off, simply pull out the linkage rod and then just kind of let it sit over here to the side somewhere. Now we need to flip this thing over. Now under here you got a screw here, 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 and way up in here, and then obviously you've got your screw over here for the muffler where it holds on. I don't have access to the front of this muffler, so I can't really take that off unless I take this box out. It's just easier to do it this way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get that muffler busted off of there. Now to get this screw off, you're going to need 2 tools. A Phillips screwdriver and a 7/32 socket. It's easy. Just put it on there, unscrew it like you normally do. Something that I forgot to mention before, there's a wiring harness that goes in here. This is actually the front mount, but it's been put on the rear, and he had the plug zip tied for the remote start. Well, unfortunately, the motor on the start has the positive prong broke off, and he didn't even have the glow plug hooked up, nor did he have the ground wire on the motor mount. So there was no way I could use it. I'm going to have to order a new motor for the electric start, and I'll probably go ahead and get a new wiring harness and a new plug and a new little starter box. They're just so much easier to know which way you're putting it in instead of using this little wiring harness that you have to figure out where it goes. I got the muffler loose, as you can see here, and as you can see right back here, this is not very tight at all. This is why there's so much crap back here. This, if everything works right, this is just a pressure tube. Pull it out of the muffler. It helps pressurize the fuel tank. That pulled off way too easy. You can see it's ripped. This is not in good shape. It's dirty. Dirty I'm not worried about, but that silicone seal is not how it's supposed to be. Muffler's off. Let's get that engine out of there. Flip it back over. And like I said, 4 bolts and this motor will almost literally fall out of this chassis. Don't forget, your fuel line is still hooked up. Now that I'm getting the last bolt out, just going to hold it up kind of at an angle, grab a hold of the head, and just remove that bolt the rest of the way. Once that's done, we're going to pop this fuel line off of the carburetor, and then that motor slides right out. Electric start, clutch bell, everything. The motor's what I'm worried about. Let's get this truck out of the way. The first thing you want to do is, obviously, if you got an air compressor, blow all this dirt off that's around this carburetor. Because I'm going in and cleaning absolutely freaking everything on this motor, I'm not going to worry about it. Check your clutch bell. It should spin relatively free, and it shouldn't have any side-to-side play or rocking movement. Get your Allen driver, proper size for your head. It does vary. Go ahead and we'll just take this head off. That'll allow us a lot more room to access the different parts of the motor. Once you get the 4 screws undone, you can see it's not that bad. But whenever I turn this motor, it is still really stiff as that piston is coming around and coming up on the compression stroke. That tells me that the crankshaft is gummed up, the bearings are gummed up, something in this motor is gummed up. I'm pretty sure it is not the piston riding on the sleeve. I don't think there is even any compression left on this piston and sleeve. For that reason, I'm going to run the crap out of it and until it dies completely, if I can get compression. Now what you want to do is we want to take these 3 screws off down here, here, and here, and get this electric start off of here. The electric start, once it's unbolted, just simply pulls off. There is a one-way bearing. Don't lose that thing. And don't get dirt in it. Now what we want to do is we want to pull that back plate off. I want to see what is inside this motor. Now that all 4 screws are out, we can just kind of pry on this and that'll come right out. Don't lose that little cam in there. That's what drives your crankshaft to start it with the electric start. First impressions, there's a lot of crap right down in here. Not looking too good. Now what we need to do is we need to figure out, is it the piston and sleeve that's causing the hard turning, or is it the bearings? My money's on the bearings. So let's get that piston and sleeve out of here. Now I'm sure you're probably sitting there cussing me right now saying how hard these piston and sleeves are to get out. Let me show you a little trick. Take a regular zip tie and stick it down in one of those ports. And then spin that motor over. It'll push that sleeve right out. Retract the piston, take your zip tie out, and that sleeve will pull right out. I can already tell it's just gummy, nasty, ugly. Now what you want to do is you want to turn it to where the connecting rod is at the top. You'll put your finger down in here and grab the piston, then you'll just kind of pull out on the bottom. That'll release it from the crankshaft and you can pull that piston out. All in all, it doesn't look too bad. This connecting rod should fall under its own weight. As you can see, it's not. It takes quite a bit of force to get it to go up and down and move, and it's pretty typical of what I expected out of this motor. Now we can see if it was the bearings or if it was the piston and sleeve. That crank is just as hard to turn. It's the bearings. So we got to take off the clutch bell, we got to take off the flywheel, we got to take off the little collet in there, we got to take the crankshaft out, got to heat the block up, get the bearings out, and clean them. It's a lot of work. It'll be worth it though. Before we get into pulling all this off though, let's get that carburetor off of there. 5.5 millimeter is the size of this one nut over here, and all it does is it compresses this little rod against the body of the carburetor to keep it in. Now we'll just twist the carburetor and it'll pull right out. We are going to be taking this apart and cleaning the living crap out of it. Carburetor's off. I can look down inside it, inside the port down in here, and I can see it's a dried, gummed up mess. If you're running Nitro, do yourself a favor, get yourself a set of good long-handled micro screwdrivers. This was a 1/8 inch by 4, which means 4 inches long. The blade is 1/8 of an inch wide. Use this to pop off your little E-clip. Sometimes it can be easier said than done. Once the E-clip's off, the clutch bell will pull right off. Don't lose that little bitty shim right there. Now, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but you can tell a lot just from how the clutch bell looks. If this thing is blue and nasty, it's been run hot, they've put it under a massive load, maybe trying to pull something like that. Well, that's not the proper way to do it. Anyway, I can see some bluing in here, but the actual clutch bell is not in that bad a shape. The clutch, it does have some marks on it, like some dirt's got up in there. One of the tricks you can do to make these actually grab harder is to flip the clutches around to where they swing out and grab like a hook instead of actually just sliding in a different manner. So now, to get this clutch off, all you have to do is just pull it right off of the 2 little clutch pegs. Now you've got that great big ass nut right there. They do sell tools to get this nut off. The easiest way to do this, to get this off, instead of having to try to hold all this and make your life just absolutely horrible, is put your piston and sleeve back in, put a little piece of string or something down in here, and then bolt that head back on. When you try to turn this, that string is going to keep that piston from coming up, and it's going to act like a lock. Or if you already have it, they sell a lock that goes in here and it'll lock that crankshaft in place. Sometimes you can hold the flywheel with a pair of pliers like this and actually break that loose. Worked for me, doesn't always work for everybody. Sometimes it'll start spinning that crankshaft within the flywheel. Now we've got to get the flywheel off. They sell pullers for this. I'd rather just put a little screwdriver down in here and just kind of give it a little twist. When you hear the pop and things go flying, flywheel comes off. Now you've got your little cone right here and there's a slot in it. What you need to do is somehow either expand that slot or get something up underneath it and pull it out. That one wasn't actually that tight, so it come off relatively easy. Now that we got all of that crap off, now we can push this crankshaft out. Sometimes you've got to get the butt end of a screwdriver and knock that sucker out. This one, yeah, I can't even turn it by finger, so it's going to take some force. Something like that. Now we need to get it the rest of the way out. Wow, was that sucker in there. Now you can see, I can already feel that bearing is nasty, 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 nasty. That bearing should not have pulled out, but that tells you just how dirty the inside of this was. Also, if you look at how dry that stuff is out there at the end, yeah, this thing wasn't getting any lubrication at all. I don't know if they were running the wrong weight oil or what. I can feel this bearing with my finger, and I can tell it's not as bad as this inside bearing, but it is still pretty darn nasty. So it's got to come out. The best way to do this, no, I'm not going to show it on camera, heat this up in a 350-degree oven. Once it comes up to temperature, you should be able to grab this with a pair of pliers, hold it upside down, and then take something like a screwdriver and start tapping it. That bearing should fall right out. Alright, got that front bearing out by heating it up a little bit, but as I was heating the motor up, look what I found. This is one of the reasons why sometimes it might not be such a good deal to buy used, but I still come out ahead on this, believe it or not. This motor and all that blue stuff you saw in there earlier, he had dropped it and broke this piece off of the block. This is a serious no-no. You can pick these blocks up for like 25 bucks. Don't do this. The fuel goes in here, goes into your crankcase, and then up into your cylinder. Raw fuel is down here. If that fuel leaks out, catches a spark somewhere, your entire vehicle is going up in flames. Don't do this. But now that I realized that I wasn't the cause of this, I'm not as mad anymore. I thought I was. Anyway, I gotta order a new block. That's not a big deal. In fact, I've got another one of these engines just laying around here. So, not a big deal. Set that aside. Now we gotta get this bearing out because this bearing has to be cleaned. The crankshaft has to be cleaned. Everything has to be cleaned. The easiest way I've found to get these bearings off when they're stuck is with a crescent wrench, of all things. You're gonna use this kind of like a little press. Adjust it to where it just slides over the crankshaft, set it down, and then just lightly tap on it. Eventually, it will come out. Eventually. Haha, eureka. One thing that you're going to notice is this bearing goes on the inside. It has no shielding on it. This bearing goes on the outside, no shielding on the inside of that bearing, but it has shielding on the outside. Don't lose that. You don't want dirt getting in this. With all the oil that these Nitro trucks make and all the dirt and everything it picks up, you need that seal. Now that I've got a good hold on the bearings, I can feel that there's no grit, but there is a lot of crap in there. The oil has gotten in there, it's dried, a little bit of dirt maybe sucked in through the filter that was not adequate enough. I will prove that to you right here. This is the filter he was using. I've never seen one like this. If Traxxas actually suggests to use this, it's a bad idea. See that crease up here? Dirty air is coming in through there. But now that I got the motor broke down, I know that I can clean these bearings and they're going to spin nice and free. I know I can clean this crank and it's going to spin nice and free. Now we need to do some checks on the sleeve and on the piston to see how well it is. We've been handling these with our dirty hands. We need to clean these off a little bit, then we can test them. My favorite product. Spray a little WD-40 on a rag. This stuff is so versatile. Clean your piston off. Try not to take all the black off. That is actually a good thing. Set the piston aside on a clean surface, and now you want to clean inside here. Spray a little WD-40 right on it. You can use paper towels. I use red rags because I'm out in my shop. And just clean that sucker off real good. Now that I know it's clean, we're going to set the sleeve on the rag, take the piston, and spray a little WD-40 on it. You don't want to run these things, you know, dry on dry. Now, slide the piston up in there and see where it starts to get pretty tight. As you can tell, I'm not coming up in there very far and it's already getting tight. This piston should have plenty of compression. I just wasn't feeling the pop because these bearings were dirty. In fact, that's as far up as I can push it, which is where the piston comes naturally on its compression stroke. This piston and sleeve is perfectly good. The bearings need to be cleaned, the crankshaft needs to be cleaned, and the block needs to be replaced. The block kind of upsets me a little bit, but guys, this is not as bad as I was expecting.